But there's this term that's being applied to us. Supatsila. So I'm like, what is this? What is this thing now? So the long short. Of course, I was not there. I don't know what meetings took place, but there clearly were meetings, because what happened next is that I think at the time of nominations, there was a concerted effort to say that we need to get rid of these guys, basically. How it was phrased, I don't know. Because what happened is that new eldership was elected. This elder that I'm speaking about, who was one of the elderly people who had really a problem with us, he became an elder. And then soon after that, and then on the Sunday morning, when now we're supposed to be, wrapping up the final things and all of that, the district pastor arrives.
I was up front.
You were about to start.
I was about to do a presentation on prayer from Steps to Christ.
Hey!
The book Steps to Christ.
In fact, you narrate this part actually, because now I was sitting on
the pastor, who will remain unnamed, stormed in, and he said, "Young men,
hold it right there.
Hold it right
David,
there."
I wish I could stand and demonstrate. It's so vivid in my memory. I remember him walking so proudly and lifting his hand, like, "Stop," and walking to the front.
"You will not present in this church, not now, not ever." Ironically, I have not yet presented at that church again since then.
Hey, maybe the curse
remained. So I was like, okay, the pastor has said it. We packed our things.
There is leeway to assess a situation by situation, such that you look and you say, okay, these are young people. They are doing God's work. They came here illegitimately. As a pastor, let me at least speak with them so that I have an understanding from their perspective. Why did you come here without request? Because had he asked us, we would have said that we don't even know. We don't know about requests. All we know is that if we get invited anyway to speak about Jesus and to speak about the things that the Adventist Church speaks about, that we have studied, we go and we present. That is all that we know. And perhaps had we said that, I do believe that, in fact, I don't know actually in terms of policy.
By the way, you were not even a baptized
member. I'm not a baptized member at this point in time.
You may not even have known that there is such a thing as a church manual.
I didn't. No, I can confirm that I didn't. I didn't know anything about the church manual. So, and I would imagine that with that context, maybe it would be with. So speaking of troubles, of those troubles. So we come into the church, and as I said, in fact, I come into the church, and you had been there. I think you had started like a few months before me. East London Central. So, and I realized, no man, there's a difference. As that I had been learning in the Bible study groups, they don't seem to be espoused by everyone. So, number one, and soon over time, there began to be this, shall I say, a clash in a sense between Ulucha Olu, who were conducting Bible studies, and I wouldn't say the rest of the church, because it wasn't the entire church, I don't think so. But it was a sizable number of it, and surprisingly enough, like many of them were Abantu Abadala, actually. And there began to be like clashes on a number of things, because for example, when it came to Bible studies, and then we were topics like health message would come up, we would hammer on the fact that, I know health message is important, and if I can draw this parallel, this would resonate kakhulu with amaXhosa, specifically Xhosa men, whereby you'd see, if you'd notice a difference between a Xhosa guy who's just become a man in the Xhosa context and a older gent, the guy who's new,
Yeah.
he's very,
Was
he's
George
very,
Mavula.
when it comes
Yeah.
to ezazindo, you can't tell him anything.
Yeah.
So to an extent, that's how we were. We were very passionate, more especially Mnagi. I
Yeah,
can speak
yeah.
for myself. I was very outspoken.
No, same here.
And he was into a lot of dreads. Oh, by the way, I had dreads and ear knobs. And while I had my dreads and ear knobs, commenting yam, I would engage, but I would limit myself
Yeah.
because I still felt like, hey, I can see or whatever the case may be. And then, this is just a bit of a detour. I remember I wasn't convinced about there's anything wrong with like ear knobs and braided hair. Up until this one time. Now, this is, Ama 2K may not relate to this.
Yeah.
This is in a time of containers in terms of like phone booths.
Yeah.
Those ones whereby you have like this big container that you'd get in and there's like a phone operator, umniki 5 rand or whatever. They tell you your phone number ban and then you make a call.
Yeah.
So I'm accompanying Usim. He was going to make a call. I don't remember to whom.
Yeah.
He was going to make a call. And then, so while we were there,
It was after Vespers. We had just come back from Vespers.
From Vespa, so that is opening
Brother Makungu.
opening of the Sabbath,
Yeah.
yes. So then, while we were there are these two drunk guys.
Yeah.
One of them is like fairly, two, they are drunk, but they are able to hold their conversation.
Yeah.
So it's not like bad tips that they are falling over. They are, but one is more tipsy.
Yeah.
The other one is utenje, kancinci, like it's just like a little bit. So anyways, I don't know how it happened that we started engaging, but we started engaging about like the Bible and issues of faith. So Sim finishes his call and then we are all here. So the 4 of us, and then we walk out, of course, because that's like we start engaging, we engage. But the entire thing was maybe give or take, I don't know, 30 minutes, I don't remember, somewhere there. Then the one who is more tipsy, I remember saying something along the lines of, God can use anyone, including you. So I say this to him. I was just impressed to say this to him. Even as far as it could be that God actually has a calling for you to be a pastor.
Yeah.
And then he pauses a bit. And when I'm looking at his facial expression, he had a facial expression that was kind of like,
Yeah.
Even numb. I'm like, no, God can really like utilize you for you to be a powerful tool in his hand.
Yeah.
So after that, then we engage a little bit more. And then he says this. This is the guy who's more drunk. He points at me basically like, you see you. I'm going to sanitize a bit what he was saying.
Yeah.
You see you. When you speak, you sound like a man of God, like a person who really is a man of God. But when I look at you, he's referring to my cornrows and my ear knobs. I see.
think we're wearing an all-star too.
Yes, I don't remember. Like when I look at you, I see these guys who go around in the township chasing our women. When he said that, I was taken aback. And then now, similar to you and hip hop, that this sort of like struggle whereby you are like, you still have strings for hip hop, but at the same time, the gospel has is gaining more of a pull on you, and as a result, you don't want to have to spend time defending your connection to hip hop. When he said that, immediately my defenses kicked in. Me trying to defend this thing that I have. Then but then immediately the Holy Spirit stopped me. And I was like, no. If I push too much trying to defend this, I may undo
everything.
Everything that we have spent like saying. So,
and by the way, the guys they looked convicted.
They looked convicted.
And you could see that the drunkenness was wearing off.
Yes.
And it's almost like the gentleman was actually saying that. It's almost like it was a cop out for him.
Yes.
That I would be listening to you, but you look
problem.
like you are not so much of a trustworthy individual.
Exactly.
I can't trust you.
So when he said that, I was taken aback, and then I think we finished the conversation. But man, that hit me. So immediately, as soon as we're done, we finished the conversation, and then, hey man, I go home, and this thing was ringing in my head what this guy said. And then within that week, if I'm not mistaken, I made the decision in Dokuba. This has to, in fact, actually, I think the ear knobs, if not in that very night, but like very soon afterwards,
I think the next day on Sabbath, you had taken them off.
I took them off. I
even
took
your
off the ear
cornrows,
knobs.
you had removed them. You had combed your hair the
Yes,
next day.
I think so. I don't remember actually. But then in no time, I cut off my hair, basically, and then I had like short hair. Because I again, as I say, the similar thing you say with hip hop, I had this thing of saying that, look, I'm called to this thing, and I know that I'm gifted and I'm passionate about sharing whatever I know that I believe in. So if I'm going to have something that is going to be a hindrance to me, it's a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned, more especially if within reason, because it's within reason that I don't really need, there's nothing that having cornrows add to me or having ear knobs, there's nothing that they add to me. So I was like, it's a no-brainer, I removed them.
It was a similar thing actually even with my dreadlocks, because I had, like I had said, I had a natty dread, you know, and I mean, I had no conviction that there was anything wrong in it, but I knew that a lot of people associate dreadlocks with smoking weed, you know. And I knew I didn't smoke, but I didn't want to have to explain to someone that I don't smoke. Because I had a few people who asked me, you seem like a decent young man. Why are you smoking marijuana? I'm like, no, I'm not smoking marijuana. Then why do you have that hair? So I'm like, so every time I meet with someone, especially if it's the older generation, I have to explain myself. Like, no, I don't need to do that. You know, and I remember when I was having that conviction, I actually dreamt. I had a dream that I had cut my hair. I woke up that morning, literally. I put on I had these 3/4 shorts, and I put on my t-shirt. I went straight to the barber without even bathing. When I had that dream, I was like, the Lord seems to be communicating the same thing over and over. Let me just cut my hair. And it was the same reason. It was like, I don't want people to ask themselves what I represent. It needs to be very clear before I even speak what I stand for. Even though there may have not been anything wrong with the dreadlocks themselves or whatever, but is it something that is it going to enhance my ability to share Christ?
Is it a hill to die on?
You know, it's not. I mean, it's like, I can do with short hair. It's like, cut my hair, leave it short.
Exactly.
Let's leave it at that.
So anyways, now I've cut my hair. Now I've removed all. Now coming back to the church now, I've removed the last inhibition that I had. So when it comes to Bible studies and whatever, I'm hitting comments hard. Now in that divide now, all of a sudden, without getting into too much details, or because that's a topic in and of itself, I'd say I find it, but there's this term that's being applied to us. Supatsila. So I'm like, what is this? What is this thing now? So, and the long, short, very super short summary of it, I may even get it wrong because I wasn't there. There was like a ministry of like young people who they called themselves a Supatsila movement. And then they had certain elements in what they were teaching. For example, they would teach heavily on the health message. And anyone who would not conform, they would, drive heavily. But we are supposed to adopt these things. That's how I can. And as a result, there was a lot of conflict between them and the church. So now,
especially in PE, by the way,
in the PE
because
area.
A lot of them were concentrated. I think it was PE Tech at the time, which merged with UPE and became NMU.
Exactly.
Masupatsila movement, by the way, the reason why they started doing these things, I'm sharing it with from their perspective, because I met people who were in the Masupatsila movement. I'm not talking people who are accused of Masupatsila because of whatever behavior. I'm talking about actual people who are in the Masupatsila movement.
Ministry, yes.
I met with the chairperson, and I met and I'm good friends with people who were part of the movement. And I think it was a similar thing of they were teaching people outside. They were, sharing. They would go out, do evangelism, teach the health message, and whatever. And among the Masupatsila, there were people who had extreme views.
Yes.
They had extreme views, and because of those individuals, there was an assumption that this was a this was a commonly held belief in the group. And because some of those people had a following, and they had people who liked their style, and because of them, it was assumed that, I remember I was told, of course, by people who were there was this brother who would, if you would peel your fruit, for example, let's say you have your orange, you would peel your orange, and he would say, my brother,
what God created.
no, what God has put together, let no man set asunder.
So he's going to eat an orange and with skin.
And the brethren would be like, but brother, what about the pineapple? What about the watermelon? Do you eat the peel too? And stuff. So it was even within that the brethren who were with him in the movement questioned that. But when you hear people who are outside or who only heard about Masupa, who don't know anyone called the Supatsila, they branded everyone with the same brush. I heard that there was there were brethren who would, you don't make a mistake of pouring soy milk into your cereal, even if it's granola. They would give you your I don't know if it was 2 liters or 5 liters of water, and you had to drink it between 4 and breakfast. Because when you are having breakfast, you have to make sure that you don't mix liquids with solids. And so one brother was
the cereal
them.
eating?
Yeah, when the brother was visiting them, they put the granola, they gave the fruits. He's like, so where's the soy milk? And he was asked, my brother, did you not drink enough milk? I mean water. Did you not drink enough water? So you needed to go
granola,
go hard on the granola as it was. Yeah, just a side joke. It's funny because sometimes I enjoy just eating granola as it is. Or like some people would see me eating this, like, this one is a real
Supatsila.
Yeah. So the point that I'm trying to make, and of course, I mean, if you talk to those, at least the ones I have met, they will admit that sometimes they would emphasize on things that they did not really need to emphasize on, and they were not really working within the processes of the church.
Yes.
And because of those things, like for example, they wanted the church to kneel all the time when praying.
When praying, yes.
And it ended up becoming their present truth. And
that if you're not kneeling,
if you are not kneeling, it's like
you're
not praying properly. You don't have faith and whatever. I remember one brother was telling me a story where they were meeting with these elders at one church, and so before they discussed the issue that they were going to discuss, the elder said, "Let's bow our heads for prayer." The brother started kneeling. Then one of the elders grabbed him by the blaze and lifted him, and he was in the air praying.
Must have been a strong elder.
So some of these stories are funny. So you had this, because you have to understand, when you're dealing with young people are very zealous. And things are always black and white with young people. And I'm glad for pastors like Dr. Papu, Dr. Mnebisa, who was, I think, a president at that time, and Pastor Papu, I think he was a youth director in the either in the conference or union at the time, who actually would meet and spend all night praying. And
Pastor Lou Pondwan is another one that comes.
Pastor Lou Pondwan, in our case, he actually came through, and I think we're going to mention that. So they actually spend time and reasoned with these young people, and instead of deplatforming them or labeling them or whatever, they spent time demonizing them. They spent time, studied with the brethren, prayed with the brethren. Sometimes they would have all nights going back and forth and whatever. And as a result, it was funny when I laughed when there was a farewell that was done for Pastor Papu, and it was held at Centenary Hall in Port Elizabeth. And there was a panel discussion during Sabbath school time. And I was looking at the panel discussion. I was like, if people knew how many people were either given the label of Supatsila in this panel or who were actually Masupatsila, people would laugh, because those people are now elders at churches. They are playing prominent roles in the church,
yes.
And they are supporting the church both with their talents and with their means and all of those things. So I think that all of us in the church, when we see young people and we see that they are overzealous,
we must guide.
We must guide them. We must guide that zeal.
Not crush it.
Not crush it. We need to manage it and not kill it. And I've developed at least 3 principles that we need in order for us to guide young people aright. Number one, we need to have, the overarching issue is that we need to have credibility.
Yes.
And how do you gain credibility with young people? Number one, you need to know what you're talking about. There are people who are ignorant. You know, they will act as if they've read something that young people are talking about. They've never read it. But because they are older, now they have to know it because they are older.
Threatened.
You know, they'll say, I know this thing. You know, but when you're listening, this person doesn't know what they're talking about. So with young people, you need to know your business. You need to know what you're talking about. Because they'll come, because a lot of young people, they read a lot. And you need to come equipped so that you can deal with them as someone that they can be confident. This person reads.
Yes.
They know. Number two, you need to also listen to them. Not for the purpose of crushing them, but to hear them out. What are they saying? So that when you are correcting, you're not correcting the wrong thing.
Yes.
And then lastly, you need to have moral credibility. Because if young people know that, when after church we know that you do some nyonyobaring business, you've lost all credibility. I mean, if they know that you are a womanizer, for example, or they know that you are living with someone who's not your wife, or they know that you are doing things that are contrary to the church's teaching.
Your profession of
you know, but I'm not talking about someone who's making mistakes. I'm talking about people who are proudly living contrary to what the Bible says. That's what I'm talking about. And then you are venturing to show them how to be balanced. How do you know? How can you teach us how to be balanced? Because if you're teaching us how to be balanced, we fear that you want to teach us to be like you. And that's what we exactly don't want. Because if we want to be in the world, we will go out to the world.
Yes.
Because that's how young people think. If we want to drink, we're going to go and drink. Yeah, we don't want to be in one foot and out the other. And I think that if older people can keep that, and then remember, these are young people. There are certain things that they are going to outgrow.
Yes.
So make sure that when they outgrow those things, they are still within your influence. So that when they become now balanced, their zeal is not neutralized. It just has more maturity and more tact. You know?
Yeah, exactly. And so now with that history, which is beautifully, you laid it way better than, because I think I knew you would have more context to me on the Supatsila thing.
Yes.
So now this group, the Bible study group, which now he's a part of, I'm a part of, because of the fact that there were some elements that were associated with the Masupatsila thing. And by the way, by the time we came into the scene, Masupatsila were not really a thing anymore.
Officially.
Yes. They started going underground effectively. And so, but now because of the fact that we were speaking on some of the points that they would speak about, for example, health message and things like that. And then there was the one controversial thing. I think our equivalent of their kneeling all the time was our refusal to like hold hands when we were praying. Because I think one of us had like read this Standish book that had spoken about an issue with like holding hands.
Winds of Doctrine.
Winds of Doctrine, yes.
And by the way, even the book Winds of Doctrine is not really focusing on hand holding, but I think there was a statement that the Standish brothers made.
Yes. It's mentioned in passing, effectively.
It's mentioned in passing.
Yes. Yeah. But then someone mentioned that, brought it to us, we hold on to that. We're like, no holding hands.
Yeah.
So now you take that and then you couple all the other things, like our advocating health message and our advocating a number of things, and our, for example, advocating to your point of saying like there must be moral credibility. Because I remember this one elder, which I will not mention. I remember this one elder who, to my surprise, to this day actually, he had a problem with the idea of saying that you are supposed to be the sermon. I remember he countered it saying something like, no, we preach what the Bible says. It's not about how we live. Something like that. I was like, this is such a strange, it's such a strange thing. It seems to be. So there were all this contention. And what effectively happened, to cut the long story short, is that, of course, I was not there. I don't know what meetings took place, but there clearly were meetings. Because what happened next is that I think at the time of nominations, there was a concerted effort to say that we need to get rid of these guys, basically. How it was phrased, I don't know. Because what happened is that new eldership was elected. This elder that I'm speaking about, who was one of the elderly people who had really a problem with us, he became an elder. And then soon after that, I remember, again now, in our immaturity and not fully understanding the church processes, I remember we were invited to go to Mthatha. The setting is East London, right? Mthatha, for those who don't know, is approximately, let's say, give or take 200 kilometers from East London. Because Butterworth is 100 and then Mthatha another 100, give or take. So Vigisville is close to Mthatha. So we were invited to a church, like a relatively small church, like a village church at Vigisville, close to Mthatha. And in fact, it's pretty much Mthatha. I think Vigisville's town is Mthatha. So we're invited to go and present there for the weekend, right? So, those amongst us who had cars, so even though we were young, there was a number of us were already, they had started working at least for a few years. So we get in cars and go to visit.
No service request, nothing.
No service request, because for those who don't understand, in the Adventist church, if you are going to go and work in another church, more especially outside of your district, you are supposed to be requested by the church that is requesting you. That we would like brother so-and-so to come and present to us. And then that church must write to your church, and then your church must then vote on it actually and say, yes, we are allowing our brother to go and service in that area.
We know him.
We know him.
His teachings
are fine and all of that. That's the purpose of that, by the way, because sometimes, when we are young, I remember back then, we viewed such things as, "Hi, man, these are all rules that are supposed to constrain us." But you do understand that, because even biblically, by the way, if you read the Bible, you'll find, I think even in the writings of Paul, pick this up from time to time, that he says that it's the responsibility of the church leadership to ensure that no strange teachings just come in. So as part of that, you then have to, as a church structure, to create systems that facilitate, to say that, okay, when a person comes to speak in whichever one of our churches, it must be a person who is known to be teaching what we teach
as a church.
As a church, right? So we don't know any of that. We just have zealous, like, okay.
By the way, by that time, I'm like 5 months in the church. Zux is like, you're like 3 months.
Three,
in the church.
We're very, very young.
Because when the storm finally broke, I was 6 months in the church,
and I was like,
we were like four.
About there. So, anyways, we go to Vigisville. We get to Vigisville. I think on the Friday, did we present on the Friday?
We presented.
We presented on the
Sabbath
Friday.
The whole day. We had a good day. It was on Sunday.
It was on Sunday.
Yeah, it was on Sunday.
So we go, we present. I think we would go and sleep at Unitra. We knew some people at Unitra, so we'd sleep there. And then on the Sunday morning, when now we're supposed to be, wrapping up the final things and all of that, the district pastor arrives.
I was up front.
You are about to start.
I was about to do a presentation on prayer from Steps to Christ.
Hey!
Book Steps to Christ.
Yo, in fact, you narrate this part actually, because now I was sitting on
the pastor who will remain unnamed stormed in, and he said, "Young man,
hold it right there.
Hold it right
David,
there."
I wish I could stand and demonstrate. It's so vivid in my memory. I remember him walking so proudly and lifting his hand like, "Stop," and walking to the front.
"You will not present in this church. Not now, not ever." Ironically, I have not yet presented at that church again since then.
Hey, maybe the curse
remained. So I was like, okay, the pastor has said it. We packed our things and
we waited outside for some time while he and the church discussed.
Engaged, and the thing is that we wanted to know what was happening from the pastor, and we waited for the pastor. Shane was like, okay, let's wait here for the pastor, and maybe he's going to engage us afterwards and tell us why he has stopped. Hey, pastor came. He just walked in front of us,
got to his car,
got into the car, started the car, left.
So then the church people then come. Shame, they were so
they were
troubled. Because, by the way, one in our groups that Utando,
yes,
I think her mother was was a church member. Was she a church member?
I'm not sure if she was a church member or she was a regular visitor.
Or a regular visitor, one of the two.
From Gangelizo or from Tata Central
I
Church.
see.
Yeah.
Because I do remember she came there. She was there at some point in time. So they were very, very...
But Jobo's family actually attends. That was Jobo's home church. When he was growing up, he went to visit the church. Even when he goes home, that's the church that he goes close to. Yeah.
So in light of that, and then, anyway, so they speak with us like the pastor said, you can't do it. And I don't remember the details of what he said to them.
No, the issue was the issue of the fact that there were no service
requests, yes.
That were processed.
That were processed,
and therefore we were illegitimately there.
Yes, exactly.
That was the reason.
So anyways, but in any case, to that, what I can say as far as that is concerned is that to the letter of the processes that is in place, okay, fine, he was well within his right. But to me, I do find a bit of a fault in the sense that, because remember, the processes that the church have in place, as I've already explained just now, why they are there. But at the same time, you are not to, I remember we were speaking earlier on off camera, and we were speaking about the fact that the things that we create, because things like the church manual and all of these things, they're not, how shall I put it? They are not divine God principles that are such that you have no chance of. There is leeway to assess a situation by situation, such that you look and you say, okay, these are young people, they are doing God's work. They came here illegitimately. As a pastor, let me at least speak with them so that I have an understanding from their perspective. Why did you come here without request? Because had he asked us, we would have said that we don't even know. We don't know about requests. All we know is that if we get invited anywhere to speak about Jesus and to speak about the things that the Adventist Church speaks about, that we have studied, we go and we present. That is all that we know. And perhaps had we said that, I do believe that, in fact, I don't know actually in terms of policy.
By the way, you were not even a baptized
member. I'm not a baptized member at this point in time.
You may not even have known that there is such a thing as a church manual.
I didn't. I can confirm that I didn't. I didn't know anything about the church manual. So, and I would imagine that with that context, maybe it would be within his right as the district pastor to say that, okay, present, and I'll sit down and I'll listen to what you guys are about. And then maybe he could have said that, you know what, these guys, they are presenting a nice, like they're presenting properly, and then leave us with a advice to say that in the future, when you do this, make sure that you first ask the person, people who are asking for you to send a service request. That would have been a much spiritually uplifting experience for everyone that is involved. The church that has invited us who are young and trying to go about our Father's business, and for him as a pastor for that matter.
And also our church.
That
may have had people who contacted him. Because
they did. They contacted him. That's how he ended up there.
So I think this is an issue of, sometimes we have learning moments or moments to educate. And before we give an action as church leaders that appears punitive, we need to use the mistake that the church members, especially young people, have made as an opportunity to educate them. So that they have their zeal, but they work within the process of the church and help them to understand why the processes exist in the first place, not to constrain their zeal, but to protect the church
work.
And to help the work move forward well. And also to protect the young people themselves. So that if they make a mistake in, let's say a young person has heard something or read something and they ran away with it and they thought it was the truth, honestly, and then they teach it at a church and a service request was processed. Now the church that has received that service can say, you recommended this young person, but it seems as if they're a bit confused on the issue of, let's say, the Godhead or the Trinity. Maybe take some time to educate them, to understand what they believe, and to engage them some more and study with them more. We picked this up in their presentation.
And so in other words, the process that's in place of the service request then becomes a full circle thing that assists everyone including the presenter,
including the one who's presenting,
who is presenting, should they find themselves.
And I think because of that experience, we started seeing the church manual, the processes of the church, and as ways that are being used to constrain young people from doing the work of God,
including pastors,
including pastors.
Yes.
And now,
which you are now.
and now there was this attitude that the church manual was an enemy. The processes of the church were inimical to the work of God,
church leadership,
the church leadership, and all of those things. And which, of course, over the years, those things God, providentially corrected.
Yes.
So
anyways, let me finish now the controversial part of it. So now, after we come back from that visit of us to Vigisfield without following proper process, I think it was then used as the linchpin.
It might have been the catalyst.
I think, and for us to then be really put into the category of people who are fighting the church now, effectively. And then I remember then there was this pastor who, I don't know when he joined, this particular pastor, which again I will not mention. And then he sat down with us at some point in time, had one-on-ones.
I heard of that meeting, by the way.
You went there. I was there. I went to the pastor's house. I think it was his house. We engaged, and then after engaging, he seemed so diplomatic and cordial. Next thing you know, I don't know if it was the next Sabbath or a few Sabbaths afterwards, he comes and he preaches. In the pulpit, you can hear that, hey, this pastor is speaking about us. And now all of a sudden, it looks like the tone has effectively changed. Then he preaches. And as he's preaching, you can hear that in Naaman. He's addressing us, and it's the kind of thing that you wouldn't expect from someone. If a person has come and sat down with you and spoken with you, even if you don't agree, for them to then go and address you on a pulpit is a bit weird. It's bad form, basically, for the lack of a better word. But anyways, soon after that, remember, I'm not baptized yet, and I'm not baptized. A baptismal is coming soon.
It was looming.
And I'm in the baptismal class. And then I remember before we were going to be baptized, they conduct that interview of checking that, are you ready? Get in that interview, I nail it, basically, because I had been cooked for a couple of months. I know like what would be expected of a baptismal candidate. Anyways, next thing I know, I don't remember when I was told that my name has been removed. That gutted me. And by the way, actually, to rewind a bit, remember, I'm there in East London for that year because I'm corresponding with UNISA. And in part of my exams, a part of like my courses, I had to go to Pretoria to go do my practicals. And I was going to be in Pretoria for 2 weeks. So I go to Pretoria for 2 weeks, like in the midst of all of this. But I think this was before my baptismal was denied. I go to Pretoria for 2 weeks, and then a lady was organized for me to stay with in the duration of that 2 weeks via my mother's friend who had organized this lady for me to stay with. The lady was probably in her 40s, at most early 50s, somewhere in that age range. So I had this book, I don't know who wrote it, Prophet of the End, which was a book speaking about Ellen White.
I think it's Vance Farrell.
Yes, I think it's Vance Farrell. And that man did a lot of work. But anyways, I digress. So I'm reading that book, and I would leave it, I think, in the counter somewhere when I'm like going to school for like the practicals, because we would do some practicals, and then towards the end I was going to then do the actual exam. So I wasn't just going there for the exam. There were like some practical classes that we were doing. So anyways, then I remember, by the way, this is how God doesn't always come from the angle you want. I remember in this trip saying to God, give me someone to evangelize to or whatever, like to speak with, that I can share you with, that they can. I remember there was this one girl who was like in my class that we started speaking about like religious things, spiritual things. She was Roman Catholic. and as we were, no, she wasn't Catholic. What was she? But these churches that branch from Catholicism,
Maybe
but
Anglican.
still, maybe Anglican, but still have like a very close,
strong
sort of like
resemblance.
to Catholicism. Yeah, exactly. But anyways, we engage, and then in no time, like, deadlocks. Remember, my tech is not the
it's
best.
0%.
It's not refined yet. So we quickly hit a deadlock, and then I was like, man. Anyways, so that Sabbath, so I'm there for the week. Then on the Sabbath, I find out a church. Tando again tells me Sunnyside Church. So I go to Sunnyside Church, and then when I come back, the lady now it's in the evening. Or like around 6 o'clock. The lady's like, I'm saying this, what is this book about? I'm like, well, I start. We start chatting from 6 until like midnight, something like that, like 6 odd hours speaking about, I'm basically, like everything that I've learned over the past couple of months, I'm like, offloading on her. And so she's like captivated, and so I'm explaining everything that I know. The Sabbath is like this and this and this. So I explained, of course I started, because it's Prophet of the End, I started speaking about Ellen White, and I had, I think, a little bit more tact than I would have like a few months before, so at least by God's grace. So, and then I explained that, and then I explained a bunch of things. I think we probably, a couple of other days, I think up until Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken, every day, when I would come back from my classes and she would come back from work, we would take it in again for like a couple of hours. Then on the Wednesday, she's like, when you go to church, please take me with. So I'm like, wow. But unfortunately, my ticket was leaving either on that Friday or on the Sabbath. That was the ticket that was booked for me. So I wasn't going, I think on the Friday actually. So I was not going. So I'm like, I don't have. But then I gave it directions to the church and all of that. So I leave. Then now, couple of weeks pass by. My baptismal is denied. Then I think about a week or two after my baptismal is denied, she gives me I think I'd sent her some books, by the way. I don't know if I sent her the conflict set, or what Ellen White books that I mailed to her. I don't remember. But anyways, an SMS gets in. I think actually we're having lunch, because we would have lunch together. Or it was a Sabbath. She says that, I just wanted to let you know that God used you mightily. This Sabbath, I got baptized.
Amen. Yeah, I remember.
So in my mind, I'm thinking, hey man, the first person that God like used me, got baptized before me. Which by the way was not supposed to be the case, because I was supposed to have been baptized by then. But anyways, so when that happened, it was an experience. But also once again, it hit hard, because I'm like, man, these people have done an injustice for me. I actually remember on the baptismal day, when the baptismal took place, and then the pastor said, is there anyone who in the next baptismal would like to be this? I stood up. Anyways, so a lot of resentment built up in me from that experience. But anyways, of course I applied back to UCT, and results came out. Of the 7 modules that I was doing, I passed 6, failed 1. I was like, But anyways, I was like, I'd already applied. Then the letter came in, we're pleased to inform you that we're accepting you back, blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh, wow. So in 2008, I go back to UCT. Now I'm a changed man. Remember, before I'm like Zeus and blah, blah, blah. Hair is cut, no ear knobs. I'm no longer cursing. I used to curse like no one's business. I thought it made me feel cool and tough. So anyways, I come back, and then I go to Mowbray Church. I start attending there because it's a church like that's close to UCT. And then the pastor, I forget his name, man. I need to find out who that pastor is, but an old white man. I forget who his name is. I'd like to imagine he's probably not in service anymore.
In service anymore.
And so I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to tell him what's what.
Yeah.
So I get his email address. I narrate my entire story to him. Like, look, this is how I joined the church. This is what happened. This is what happened. I was denied the baptismal, this and this. And now I feel like it's time. I need to get baptized now. He read my letter. He never even asked me further questions. He just said, you know, from just reading your story, you know, I forgot his exact words, but it was to the effect that, you know, God is working in your life and let's do it. Let's get baptized. Now, the baptismal at my church, in terms of like the candidates, it was not going to happen like anytime soon, but there was one that was happening at Claremont Church, which is like, it was part of his district. So he was like, okay, Claremont there's a baptismal there. I don't know if it was in a week or 2 weeks' time. So then basically it was organized for me to be baptized at Claremont Church. Got baptized at Claremont Church, and then I came back to Mowbray Church, and then I was accepted into membership at Mowbray Church, because I was engaging, so Mowbray Church already knew me by then. This was around July, if I'm not mistaken, 2008. So, in a nutshell, that was then, and then from there, I guess one could say the rest is history in terms of like my introduction and how I became a member of the church. But hey, man, it took thereafter years for me to let go of that resentment. There were times that, honestly speaking, in my prayers, I think I was probably sending curses in the ways of all who did me injustice. I was like, God, fight for me. You know how they did me bad. As a result, I remember in recent years, because I mean, a few, at least I'll say, of the people who were involved in that saga, I'd say they hit some hard times. I'll just put it like that. And I remember there was a time that I felt like I actually prayed and said, hey, Lord, whatever, you know, anything that may be, because I do know that God does fight for his people at times. So I'm like, anything that they may be experienced that is due to whatever ill doing they did towards me, I ask that I release it. In other words, I've made peace. So I'm praying on their behalf. If they can make right their ways, forgive them as far as the wrong that they did. I had to do that prayer, because I felt like, because we almost practical, really honestly, I sent curses, to be honest with you. Lord, not, of course, not to say bulale, but to say, Lord, you see what is being done here. Fight for me. So I was like, I'm over. It took me years to get to that point. I mean, I was already a married man and long in service in the church for me to get to that point. So I guess I'll end this sort of like segment of narrating this thing by saying that it's very critical for us as the elderly one in the church, because I mean, in my late 30s, I would put myself in that group now. The elderly.
Even the church.
30
is the cutoff time
for
for
you.
For
Now
you,
we're
exactly. Among the old people.
We're among the old people, exactly. So the elderly in the church and the church leadership in particular, because the church is your responsibility as church leadership when the church is making mistakes to say, no, we are making a blunder here. When dealing, to reiterate what you said, when dealing with new souls, more especially young people, but new souls, generally speaking, you must have the burden of souls. You can't deal with soul. Mistakes will be made.
Definitely.
But when we are dealing in particular now, specifically with mistakes that are due to people trying to do the right thing, you can't have this attitude of othering them and deplatforming them. And for me, in my experience, and I still hold strong to this view, to speak of those 3 points that you were mentioning, the first one in particular, a thing that tends to drive leaders, all the way including your peers, pastors for that matter, to want to take this stance of quickly deplatforming and demonizing and saying, no, gag their mouth, and effectively issuing gag orders, and instead of first engaging. The thing that causes people to fall into that trap as leaders is when they themselves do not study. And they do not acquaint themselves with the word of God broadly, because of course you're not going to be an expert in every area, but you need to get yourself to a point whereby you are broadly well studied and acquainted with the things of God, such that when a particular topic becomes controversial, it doesn't take that long for you to quickly bring yourself up to speed and then be able to deal with it. So if you have now young people who are coming and they are having this teaching, it should take you a couple of days or at most a few weeks for you to quickly acquaint yourself with that, so that you can be able to as quickly as possible to say, okay, come, let's sit down. Let's engage.
Which is the method that, because I remember, you know, things became very tense.
And then you guys were oh yes, I'm sorry, that's what happened. That you'll mention it. Before, while I was still in East London, you guys were.
So the new leadership came in, and effectively one of the first actions that they took was to actually disfellowship some of us. Because by now the youth group had grown. There was a time when during Bible studies there would be more than 30 people. And there was a way in which the Bible studies were demonized, as if they came out of nowhere, even though they were officially voted by the church and they had been organized by the then youth leader. And when the youth leader had stopped being a youth leader, before the end of his term, by the way, because according to the church manual, the term ends when the year ends. This was before even their year ended. But after the new church board was voted in, they started being active before the year ended. That was an interesting...
Oh yes, because there's supposed to be this period of like sort of like transitioning.
So that the new church board starts in the following year. But this new church board started before the year ended. And within 2 weeks of them being in the church board, they disfellowshipped us. Not disfellowship, they removed us from membership.
Was it Vespers?
No, it was in a Wednesday meeting.
It was a Wednesday meeting.
It was a Wednesday meeting. Because I remember
there was the new church that we were trying to acquire.
Yes. I remember I was in Mount Frere. And
you went there again.
Yeah, I was
you
like
not being there for this.
No, I was not there. You know, my work as an accountant, gave me weird working hours.
It would send you away.
It would send me away. So that's why I was not there. But for me, the saddest thing was that this thing happened. You know, the way that I heard it was interesting. I called. I was like, "How did prayer meeting go?" He said, "Which prayer meeting?" There was no prayer meeting. And then I was like, "So okay, you probably must have met," because this is how crazy it was. The Bible studies had gone to a point where we would meet Sundays, Mondays, Tuesdays. Wednesday would go to church for prayer meeting, because we didn't want to.
As a general, for those who may not know, on Wednesdays, Adventists generally will meet for like as a midweek prayer meeting. And then of course Friday we open Vespers. Yes.
So on Wednesdays and Fridays we didn't meet because we didn't want to interrupt the church programs. We wanted to make sure that we were there, we supported. We were very zealous, by the way. I remember for Vespers we would bath, we would dress in our Sabbath suits. And sometimes people are coming back from work, they are casual. We would come to Vespers
I
full suits, whatever. So we because we were trying to be respectful to the church programs. And this I was like, okay, if there was no prayer meeting, did you people meet for Bible? I said, no, we're here mourning, and that's how you answered. But you said that laughing. I said, what are you mourning about? He said, no, you guys have been chopped, and all of us we've been. Oh no, that part had not yet come, by the way. And then I was like, no, Zooks is playing around with me, because he said it laughing. So I called Kwaita, one of our friends. I was like, Kwaita, I'm hearing Zooks saying this, He said, no, my friend, it's exactly what happened.
All of you with membership there.
Yeah, all of us who had membership there, including the previous, one of the previous elders and one of the previous youth leader. Two of them, and then two others of us. And then when you people went on Friday for Vespers, that's when you were told that you are not wanted there, because there was a list of about 25 young people who were not welcome at the church.
The following.
So we were not.
That when it happened?
Yes, that's when you actually found out that even the ones who were not disfellowship because their membership was not there, but anyone who appeared on that list.
We don't want to hear.
They were not welcome.
Were you not there for that one?
No, because I told myself I'm not going to go to the church.
I was there, and I remember the elder this elder that I said, it almost would have appeared as though he was specifically
Driving.
nominated to deal with this problem of these Supatsila
young people.
But anyways,
Yeah.
he walks in in a fashion somewhat reminiscent of the pastor at Disfellowship.
Yeah.
He walks in and then he says, I'm going to read this list. And all the people in this list, as soon as I finish reading this list, must walk out the door and never come back. They're not welcomed here. And after I finish reading this list, there will be no discussion, there will be no engagement, there will be no debating. As soon as I finish reading the list, the people mentioned out the door, you are no longer welcomed into this church. Then he proceeds to read. Bruh, it's the type of stuff that it's like this is a movie stuff. This is like a movie script, like almost as though like it's kind of like a move that you would expect from like a Godfather or something like that. That as soon as I'm finished reading, there will be no discussion. There will be no. It was a shock. We laugh now, but it was serious. And so as soon as he finished reading, we filed out because we were like we could see.
The brethren came in. For those who are listening, the brethren came in, and we had been there. We decided to have our own Vespers. We are busy there. Reading the Bible, sort of like in a melancholic kind of spirit because we're like we can't go to church. This thing has happened, and the brothers, barge in. Like it's not been 30 minutes. You left the house. What happened? And the church was close by to where we would normally gather. To fellowship. And the brethren said, we're also not welcome there. Yeah, we were in a list, blacklisted, so we can't go. Then the sad thing is that from the churches, I ended up going to Amalinda Church, and it was a blessing to have, one of our friends, Hlubi, who also had been a member at Mowbray Church, but he would come and visit East London because his brother stayed there. And he was one of the people that, would encourage us and strengthen us. A very spiritual brother.
And by the way, when I came to Cape Town, he was one of the people that then welcomed me this side.
Yeah. So Brother Hlubi met with us. He said, what? Sometimes your numbers may be intimidating, and even though you may be sharing the truth, or at least what you are convicted to be the truth, the fact that you are in these numbers. You will, you may intimidate people, and maybe consider going to different churches.
As in not moving as
a group to like to one church.
Let's now all go to Amalinda. What is this invasion?
Some of us went to Amalinda Church. I think some went to Mizra. I think that's when Brother Ndwana and them met with Mfunsulu Pondwan. And unfortunately, there were letters that were circulated. Among the churches,
basically gagging orders. Like, don't ever allow
these ones, even for Sabbath school to comment, and stuff like that. And we're not saying it as a rumor. We're told by the leaders of the churches that hey, we are told that you people are dangerous. Like, no, it's fine. I mean, if you don't want us to speak, we'll just sit here and have church.
I think I'd left by then, right?
Yeah, you had left. You had left by then.
Come to Cape Town.
Yeah. So I remember Brother Ndwana, was among those who went to the inland district to Danzane, and they met up with Pastor Lupondwan, and Pastor Lupondwan called them up. He said, we heard that you people have been removed from the churches in East London, in the coastal district. What's happening with you? So he sat down with the brethren, and he questioned them about so where do you think is the problem? They said no, this. Said no, but you people, that's Adventism.
That's just to interject.
Yeah.
Pastor Lupondwan, I think, at the time was the youth director, if I'm not mistaken, of the Cape Conference. Either then or
shortly after that. Because at that time he was the district pastor.
He was the district pastor, yes. So shortly after that he became a youth director, so he was involved with youth things. I remember he went and he spoke at Dazim UCT. That's when I met him. And then somewhere it came up, the talks of the saga and all of that. Then he told me, but no, I met with those guys, and he says exactly what you're saying. After I listened, I sat down with them, I listened to like, but this is Adventism.
That's what he said.
That's what he said.
And then he said, what people need to understand is that, Adventism comes in different shapes and forms. and different flavors. And there are some people who are more on the serious side, and there are some people who are more liking the music. Some people like the studying. Some people like prophecy and whatever. But then he said, look, just understand that people don't have the same understanding that you have, and therefore the way that you present whatever you believe,
must be cognizant.
You need to be cognizant of that. Don't appear to be forceful. And there was this mentality that the brethren were on some holier than thou mentality,
And to an extent, it was probably there.
To
an extent.
It was probably there. But as we keep coming back to this thing, and I want people to understand that we are not saying that the church was all at fault and we had none, because we have actually showed where, in retrospect, we realized that we could have done better here. We could have moved better here. We should not have made it an issue with holding hands. We could have been more tactful in how we presented our convictions on the health message and all of those things, and all of those things. But all of this happened in the context of us being young people.
Of course.
And when we had people like Pastor Lupondwana who mentored us, I remember there was a brother, Utais Jafta, from PE. Yes, because he's the one who said, look guys, we had this experience that you are going through. And he said, I remember him saying, look, we made a mistake of emphasizing on kneeling as if that was the main thing that we...
and then he was part of
he was part of the
Supatsila
movement. And he said that's where we actually made a mistake. And the second mistake that we made was that we did not educate ourselves as to the processes of the church. So certain things that we could have avoided, we ended up. So he said, be careful of making mountains out of molehills, and emphasizing things that are not the most important, to the detriment of what God may have given you to share with the church that is more important than not holding hands, than whatever. So those people gave us perspective, and now we started changing the way that we were moving. And I remember when shortly after I was at Amalinda, we started engaging with the then president of the conference, and we ended up writing letters, and the pastor who was there was changed, another pastor was put, and I thank God for the work of, it was specifically Pastor Made and Pastor Shugu, who actually started engaging with us, trying to find out from our perspective. And I think what helped is that we didn't show bitterness towards the people that at least we were convinced were involved and they were forward in this thing. And we, even though we may have had whatever we thought about this and that and some of the processes of the church.
It's a good thing I was gone by then.
I
had resentment.
You had beef. And I'm going to share shortly, what happened to me. But one of the things, we were consistently returning tithes to the church, even when this action was taken against us. And I remember in one of the meetings, Pastor Shugu was saying, but Brother Poswa, I can see here, according to the church records, you're still returning tithes to the church, and you're still coming to church. I'm even hearing that there are people that are being baptized because of your labors, because during that time, after some time, I had quit my job because I was impressed that God wanted me to focus on missionary work and soul winning. So he said there are people that were baptizing that say that the person who gave them Bible studies is you. Because those things, they get on record. People have to write, who prepared you for baptism. They write Sim to Mr. Posa, and this Sim to Mr. Posa is
a number of these.
So it was like, so I said, and I was like, Mfundis, I don't have an issue with the church. Whatever people believe, I've never had an issue with the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I left my job because I believe so much in the message of this church that I'm willing to take it to the entire world wherever God will send me. And I'm willing to leave my job, which is my only crutch in life. I mean, I don't have parents to fall back on, but I'm so convicted with this message that
and en route to be a CA.
I'm en route to be a CA. That was my ticket to freedom.
It's not a Mickey Mouse sort of like career. Not to undermine any career, but in other words, it's a serious sacrifice to make.
I mean, in South Africa, there was a point in time, I think it's still the case, where if you are on the road to being a CA, you are almost guaranteed to have a job.
Yeah.
And if somehow, some way there's a demon that is blocking you from having a job in South Africa, there are many other places in the world where you can go,
That
you
you
know.
can,
And I've mentored so many people even after I left the field who have ended up being CAs. And some of them, I was tutoring them when they were at university and stuff like that. So, and so
in other words, that's to testify to how much you believed in this message.
in the message of the church, and the fact that I was not staying at home. And by the way, people need to know that we were approached by people who had a message that the Seventh-day Adventist Church is Babylon, and we're supposed to leave it. Because they thought that maybe that's what we were preaching, because that's what was going out there to people, that we were actually attacking the church. Like, no.
Reformers.
Yeah, I was like, no, brethren, no, there's a mistake that you have made. One of them, he was so angry after he tried for weeks to convince us. And he was coming like, you know...
Oh, you mean like this, one of the guys who were
Yes.
trying to say, hey, the SDA church is
It's
Babylon, so leave
but
it.
But he was acting more like on a more a snake in the grass kind of movement. Like he's not saying it, but everyone else who was his follower was saying it blatantly, until he was like, the church has fallen and it will never rise again. We said, brother, if you're speaking that language,
that's not what we
God
are
bless
about.
you. Bye-bye. You know, because he was mistaken.
Yeah, you may.
He was fed the wrong info. We said, no, we have no issues with the church.
That's not where we are.
Where we are. This is a local church issue. This is something that had happened at a local church. And we're not going to take something that happened at a local church and paint the whole Seventh-day Adventist Church with that brush.
Precisely.
And this is the prayer that I prayed when this saga was going on. And I said, Lord, you know, help me to examine my heart and be honest where I've made mistakes, and you allow you to change me. But I said, Lord, there is a high temptation in my heart to hate these people. That was the prayer that I prayed. So that is the highest temptation. And then I said, Lord, I used to read this verse, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, pray for them who despitefully use you and persecute you. And I used to say amen. But now you have given me a chance to actually live that.
Hey.
And it is not that easy. Please give me grace to actually love these people.
Yeah.
And when all is said and done, I believe that God gave me that love. Because whenever I saw them, I never had any resentment. I just had a yearning that I wish God can reach, you know, these brethren. And I can say that a lot of people who had been on the affirmative that we should be removed, I ended up having very good relationships with, because in my mind, God convinced me that, you know, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world. So people become victims of being used sometimes by the enemy. And I'm not saying this from a high pedestal of self-righteousness, but I am saying that, I'm saying it from a perspective of there are better ways in which we could have been dealt with.
Yes.
And I understand, and the reason why we're sharing this experience, by the way, some people may be wondering, why are you people sharing this? You know, you started well, these things that are exciting, you know, about your conversion, but now you're coming, you know, on this, you know, dark experience. Yeah, people will have dark experiences in the church, and we know that the experience that we had was not unique to us, because we have traveled in various parts of the country and in various parts of the continent. And I've had the privilege of even traveling outside of the continent. And I know for sure that this has happened to some degree or another in other parts of the world, where young people were trying to be serious about God and who were overzealous and maybe some went to some extremes or neglected certain things that were important or presented the message in an untactful way, or whatever the case may have been, were burned with the same fire. And I believe that some of those young people, unfortunately, they turned to alcohol.
Left the church.
Some left the church. Some started going into the world. And some young people who saw how young people were trying to be serious were treated. They were like, maybe the best thing in the church is for me to be lukewarm. Yeah. Yeah, when you are too hot, then the water spills out. And so it had detrimental effect to other people. I remember I met this young lady. Now that I'm a pastor now, I was preaching in Pretoria at one point. I think it was in a camp meeting, one of the TOC camp meetings. And a young lady who had been a student at Forte at that time, you know, and she said, you know, you people, the zeal that you had for studying the Word of God and reading the Spirit of Prophecy and teaching, and we wanted to know, we wanted to learn, But the problem was that, hey, we didn't want the heat.
We didn't want to, catch hands by association.
Yeah, by association. and people, you always ask, what if, I have that picture of when the church and the youth group were working together, and when we would have these droves of young people. One of my cousins was actually coming. Yeah, she started coming to the Bible studies.
I remember.
My brother, my eldest brother, had started coming to church because of the influence of those Bible studies, when the brethren would drop me off at home. And some people may not understand the places where we were coming from. I was coming from a place where my family had just been affected by the death of my parents. My brothers were always around people who were drinking, smoking marijuana, and bringing girls into the house. So that youth group became such a place of refuge for me. I remember the brethren said, you know what, come and stay with us, because you are constantly in this temptation to come back, to the old life that you were living. I remember one time, long story short, these ladies came with my brother. My brother was coming from the club, and he came with his girlfriend and her two friends. And those girls came into the bed where I was sleeping. Yeah, and they started, touch me, tease me, some kids sweat, kind of. Hey, and I was like, but God kept me in the midst of that. So I shared those things with the brothers and said, no, come and stay with us. And so with us, that thing was a lifeline. Yes. And if that youth group had not been there, I would definitely not be a pastor today. Yeah. Because it was when, I don't know if you remember this part, when Musa would have Bible studies with students from Walter Sulu University, the border campus. And he would say, I can't make it to the Bible study. Please, Zooks and Sim, please go and do the Bible study on my behalf. That's how we learned to actually give Bible studies. Sharing Bible studies with people. So that's how my interest in missionary work, to a point where my colleagues started asking me, you seem to be more interested in telling us about Jesus than you are about accounting. Now, this is, I don't want anyone to get things wrong. Yes, I was not doing poorly in my work. I was doing a great job.
Proper.
Yeah, I was doing a great job. And this is not to pat myself on the back. Yes. When I handed my resignation to the staff partner, I remember Mr. De Beer saying to me, Sim, you are one of our best first year trainees or younger trainees. And your future is bright here. I already had plans in my mind for you. And because I used to ask myself.
In other words, is there any chance
you
for
can
you to
reconsider this? Because I was one of the only trainees, at least at that firm, where I would be sent with the audit manager on an audit. It's me as a trainee, first year trainee, and the audit manager. That's it. We're going to do an audit. That means all the footwork that needs to be done, I was doing it. And I used to ask myself, he said, and then he told me, he said, why do you think I will send you with Lundi to go to audits? Why do you think I'm doing this? Because I can see your focus. And I was a Seventh-day Adventist, and I was not compromising with Sabbaths. And I told them at the interview, he said, sometimes we're worried because you can't work on Saturday, and somehow, somewhere you end up finishing your work before the Saturday comes, such that we don't need to call for you and all of that. So I don't know now what to do. Can you go and reconsider your decision? He gave me another week or two, and I gave it. And then after I even came back and said, I'm still making the same decision, he asked me to extend the time that I had given them to another month and whatever. Now, if I was a lazy trainee, he probably would say, in his mind, oh,
good riddance.
Good riddance.
Oh, no.
We're trying to find out
labor laws. No problem to think about labor laws.
Yeah. So we love the church. We're young people. We made mistakes. But I believe that if the church had acted differently, more could have been done.
Amen. And just to kind of like jump on what you're saying, like really, like in you say, I've never done this exercise that you're saying you sometimes would do, of really imagining if the church had actually like utilized that energy of the youth, how much
could have been accomplished?
Good damage or damage to the kingdom of Satan would have been done.
Because even during this time, look, if when we were not welcome in our local church, we would go to rural areas like Mount Frere, and we planted a church in Kwidlana working with Pastor Mhlan. And that church is still standing today. I remember the family that, sort of like adopted us as their children, the Mbedu family. Their youngest daughter is now a CA. She went and did accounting in whatever. She has gone to the Netherlands. She's done so well in her work. I remember she was sending me a message on LinkedIn, Booty, how can I prepare? You've lived overseas. How can I prepare my mind for what is happening, because I'm moving to the Netherlands and stuff. And so we were being used in other places. I remember we also went to Stekspruit in Penhoek, where Pastor Baduza had retired, and they were trying to plant a church there. We were working with him, and we had a youth mission there, because we started GM Gospel to the youth missions. And we went for 2 weeks with Bomikazi at one point, and then the whole group, we went for a December holiday. I was shocked in 2017, was it 17 or 18, when Pastor Mabenge called me. He was the district pastor, to come and be the youth speaker for the camp meeting. And Penhoek now was a church that was represented at camp meeting. So when each of the churches was asked to stand, and when I was at session in 2018, and Mrs. Mbedu stood as a representative of Kwidlana Church, as a delegate of Kwidlana Church, I was like, man, the work that we did in 2008, 2009, God planted, and this is at the time when we were
hostility.
There was hostility within even our local church.
It kind of like reminds me of the experience of the early Christians, because you remember, because of the persecution in Jerusalem, and then
they started spreading.
It was time for.
So what we're saying is that, yes, we went through this experience, but it has become a blessing to us in disguise. And I can tell you right now, in my pastoral experience, this season of my life has helped me more than any. Because even when people are being brought now for discipline, my knee-jerk reaction is, how can I exercise mercy and grace in this situation? Rather than, how can we punish this young person or punish this person for the sin that they have committed now? Now there's evidence that the person has done wrong. But because of what happened to us, and because, by the way, when that happened to me, no elder pastor, deacon visited me. None of them even knew where I stayed. So that was a problem in and of itself. So I was like, so the church has decided not just to censure me, but to remove me from membership. But no one has ever come and talked to me about what I'm being actually removed from. But the church brought us back to membership, and
after those talks,
Pastor Shugu, Pastor Made, it took a process of like 2 years. It was almost like 6 months before I went to school in the US.
For it to be finalized.
For it to be finalized and to be fixed. And I told myself, I'm going to leave East London Central and I'm going to go to Amalinda. But at some point I was like, you know what? If I'm going to go to Amalinda, let me at least stay a year at East London, So I can show them that there's no beef. I'm not, there's no hostility. I don't have hostility with anyone. And by the time I left, of course, I was getting on well with the leadership at the church, whether they were involved in that situation or not, and all of that. And since I came back even from school, it's been good vibes. And for me, I learned in that situation that God will grow you in faith by whatever means He chooses. We don't have a multiple choice. God says, what do I bring into your life? Is it this one, this one, this one? And when you come to church, you don't expect angels. The same people. We are all here. God is working on us, and God will use each of us to work on each other. And sometimes those ways in which He uses us to work on each other are not pleasant. but we need to accept whatever comes from the hand of God, because there hath no temptation taken you but such as is common to men. But God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted above what you are able, but will with the temptation also make a way of escape, that you may be able to bear it. So I hope that we can learn lessons from this experience. It was not at all to put any shade on anyone that we shared this experience, but we want to be realistic about the Christian experience. Sometimes it has bumps, and some of the bumps are actually within the church. And sometimes Satan uses people or circumstances in the church to discourage us from our Christian walk. But I can be glad to say, both Zooks and I, God has used that experience instead of for it to become a hindrance to our Christian growth, to be part of the reason why we are still involved in his work. I as a pastor, and him as a leader in his local church, and also serving in various committees in the conference, using his talents in computer engineering as a programmer, and also in other leadership skills that God has given him to lead in the church. And also God has called me to pastoral work in his own providential way, that what happened to us did not kill us spiritually, but it made us stronger. And whoever may be struggling in the church, may be struggling with leadership, we understand where you are coming from, but the solution is not to throw in the towel, but it is to understand that if God allowed it to happen, here's a reason for allowing it, and his providence will lead. Amen. May God bless us, and may we grow in our experience, and even through the hard times.
Amen.